He didn't say welcome back. He said, "You're easily replaceable," and smirked like it was policy. My name is Calder Voss. I'm 49, and for 12 years I kept the government business alive at a mid-sized firm called Summit Ridge Systems. I walked in from a week off in Santa Fe, set my briefcase down, and my manager, Neil Kincaid, fired that line at me as if it were a memo. "Copy that," I said, because I've learned not to wrestle pigs before lunch. I could see him in the glass of his corner office, smoothing his tie and rehearsing something impressive for whoever would listen. He'd been my boss for 3 years, ever since the company restructured. Before that, I reported to the CEO, Harlan West, a founder with enough scar tissue to respect mine. My inbox held 40-something messages about the Ravenna Shield program, a $26 million defense contract I'd coaxed through labyrinthine channels for half a year. The phone rang. Commander Elise Hart from the Department of Defense, program lead. "Calder, glad you're back," she said. "Phase 2 timelines. We'll need your read." My keyboard woke up like an old friend. Specs, dependencies, who signs what and when. Meanwhile, I could hear Neil on speaker, probably performing for Harlan. "The team really stepped up," he'd purr. "Good leadership makes the difference." In those sentences, team meant me, and leadership meant his signature under my work. I hovered over a job board I'd bookmarked and never visited. 12 years of clearances and relationships isn't something you click away. In the Navy, I learned procurement logistics in places the press release never mentions. At Summit Ridge, I learned the domestic version. Who reads everything, who reads nothing, and who quietly decides everything while everyone else signs. My clearance sat a rung higher than anyone inside Summit Ridge. Secret with compartments that took 3 years of interrogations, neighbors, finances, the full audit of a life. You don't shortcut that with a tuition bill and a LinkedIn endorsement. Neil had 0 clearance. He arrived from commercial construction with an MBA and a plan to bring discipline to federal contracting. In our first meeting, he asked for a simple breakdown. I gave him a war map, 12 active contracts, 18 prospects, gatekeepers, shadow gatekeepers, timelines that move when people PCS out and back in. He blinked once and asked, "Can't we just bid lower and win more?" That should have been my weather report for the next 3 years. He loved credit, feared context, and scheduled alignment sessions during proposal red lines I'd already told him would take me through midnight. When Commander Hart had a question, she asked for me. When Offutt's folks wanted a technical walk, they arranged around my schedule. In meetings, Neil turned those facts into a slide about his strategy. 3 days after the smirk, I sat in my truck with the engine cooling, and a text pinged from a number I recognized. "Still interested in that senior partner role? Safiya Noor, Orion Meridian." Orion Meridian was our fiercest competitor in the federal space. I'd talked with Safiya at a defense conference last fall. She'd floated a partnership. I'd said I was loyal. I meant it at the time. I thought about Commander Hart, about the acquisition officer at Offutt, who never returned Neil's calls but always picked up mine, about White Sands Test Center waiting for my spec sheet, and not anybody else's. I called Safiya. "No small talk," she said. "We lost a partner to retirement. I want you. Full partnership track. Equity. You keep your book of business and run it your way. 2 weeks. 1 if you can do it." While she talked, I stared through Summit Ridge's glass facade. Neil was pantomiming leadership to Harlan, chopping the air with his hand. I felt something like quiet weather move through me. "Send the paperwork," I said. I wrote a resignation letter that could fit on a receipt. Effective immediately. "Thanks for the opportunity." I carried it to Harlan's office. "What's this, Calder?" he asked. "Neil's right," I said, setting the paper on his desk. "I'm easily replaceable, so you won't have trouble with Ravenna Shield, or Offutt's radar upgrade, or White Sands' testing facility. All yours." His knuckles went pale on the letter. "Let's talk." "I've accepted a role at Orion Meridian," I said. "They think what I do is a skill, not a line item. I cleaned out 12 years in an hour. Binders, notebooks, the hand-sketched relationship graphs I never, ever uploaded anywhere. The database stayed. The relationships buckled themselves into my passenger seat. I was still in the parking lot when my phone lit up. Ravenna Shield contract. Cancelled effective immediately. See Dr. Hart. 2 hours later, I was in Orion Meridian's 21st floor conference room in St. Louis, signing my partnership agreement, while the Mississippi threw back the late light, and Harlan called 3 times in a row. "What happened between you and Neil is irrelevant," he said when I finally answered. "This is bigger than both of you." "It is," I said. "It's as big as the distance between a clearance and a credential." "Ravenna is $26 million across 3, he said. "Commander Hart won't speak to Neil. She says the contract is off unless you manage it." "That's unfortunate," I said. "Don't do that," he rasped. 12 years counts for something." "It should," I said, "but 3 years counts too. 3 years of a manager who came from retail towers and tried to run the Pentagon like a strip mall. Government contracts aren't line items, Harlan. They're relationships. They're trust. And they require a human with a clearance you can't buy at orientation. You can't just swap a face and keep the signature. We'll get him cleared. We'll bring in consultants. Secret with compartments is 18 months minimum," I said. "And you can't consult your way into Commander Hart's patience." Silence. Sophia slid the last page to me and I signed it. She caught my eye like, "Breathe." "What do you want, Calder?" Harlan asked finally. "For Neil to learn what the words easily replaceable actually replace." The next morning, the dominoes fell in polite, lethal emails. Offutt pulled their 16 million radar upgrade citing personnel risk. White Sands suspended negotiations on a 9 million annual testing facility. Each notice said the same thing in different diction. "We work with you, or we work with someone else. We don't work with a logo that doesn't know how the work works." Sophia asked me if I knew it would collapse that fast. "No," I said. I knew he'd confused a pipeline with a relationship. I didn't know the pipeline would evaporate the minute they saw who was holding the hose. By noon, my phone had 17 missed calls from Summit Ridge numbers. I turned it face down and got to work building Orion Meridian's federal practice the way I'd built it the first time. Carefully, personally, with receipts. Receipts matter in stories like this. So let me show you mine. Receipts. I kept a folder called Ravenna, Source of Truth. It held email chains with Commander Hart, line-by-line red lines with timestamps, and a 1-page Assumptions and Exclusions we both signed. A second folder, Offutt COV4, contained the technical baselines cross-referenced to a call log, date, duration, attendee initials, and my notes on who actually makes decisions, when committee is listed on paper. Screenshots existed of every cancellation. They didn't say my name. They didn't have to. This is not legal advice. Timeline. Day 0, resignation delivered, Orion papers signed. Day 0, 2:37 p.m., Ravenna canceled. Day 1, Offutt and White Sands suspended. Day 3, Harlan asked for a conversation about returning. Day 6, Neil tried the word promotion. Day 10, the board met. Facts did the talking. Policy. FAR and DFARs don't say don't be a jerk, but the reality inside secure programs is simpler. Continuity is risk mitigation. I learned that in uniform. I enforced it in a suit. Logs. I had a color code in my notebook. Red for must-have deliverables, blue for technical unknowns, green for relationship moments, who missed a kid's game and why, who had a parent in hospice, who was cycling orders in 6 months. Government work is human work, with an acronym accent. On day 3, Orion's office manager forwarded a voicemail from an unknown number. "Neil, He moved straight to bargaining. "Calder, this is getting out of hand," he said. "Harlan's ready to talk big raise. Department head, you name it." "What changed his mind about value?" I asked. "He understands outcomes," Neil said, voice tight. "We all do." "Outcome 1, I said. "You told the only person with a clearance and a map that he was a replaceable part. Outcome 2, I believed you." He tried another line, something about loyalty. I looked out at the arch, lit up, and thought about all the times loyalty had been a one-way street with a toll at my end. Harlan called an hour later with a more honest offer. "Neil is gone," he said. "Take his role. Equity. 40% bump." "I'm curious about the timing," I said. "Why didn't any of this matter last week?" "Because I trusted his assessment," he said. "And now, I know exactly what $48 million in lost revenue feels like." The following Monday, Sophia walked in with a folder thick as a phone book and a grin I hadn't seen yet. "You need to hear this," she said, tapping speaker. "Harlan West," came the voice on her phone, strained. "We're proposing a partnership between Summit Ridge and Orion Meridian. You take over government projects. We provide admin and facilities. 60-40 split. In your favor." I leaned toward the speaker. "Hello, Harlan." 10 seconds of dead air. "Calder, I am this conversation," I said, calm. "The clients made that clear last week. If you want my help, you're buying desks and copy machines, not relationships." Sophia laid out our counter. We'd acquire Summit Ridge's government division assets, space, equipment, admin staff, for fair market value. Contracts and relationships would remain with Orion and me. "That eliminates our division," Harlan said. "It's already eliminated," I said. "Neil eliminated it when he tried to manage people he didn't understand by pretending he didn't need them." We ended the call. We did the paperwork. 3 weeks into Orion, my life felt 10 pounds lighter. We opened a secure lab space, hired 2 engineers I trusted from my shipyard days, and built a cadence. Monday morning sit rep, Wednesday risk review. Friday, no slides, stand up. Commander Hart called to accelerate Ravenna's timeline. I told her what was possible and what wasn't. She thanked me for saying the second part out loud. Mid-roll moment. If stories like this help you navigate work with your head high, tap subscribe and drop a like. It tells the algorithm and us to make more like it. The industry loves a cautionary tale. Neil's name started doing laps through procurement circles as an example of how corporate arrogance can turn a healthy pipeline into a chalk outline. He'd applied to a couple of commercial outfits, but defense is a small town that happens to span a continent. Word travels with its boots on. A former colleague, Soren, texted me after a company-wide at Summit Ridge. Neil spent an hour calling the collapse temporary headwinds and said maybe losing Gov is a blessing because it's too restrictive, he wrote. Blessings that come with a 40 QM price tag are usually called lessons. Sophia showed me something I'd never fully seen, even after all these years. From the government side of the table, the vendor is often a person. The badge, the voice that answers in the same tone every time. The one who knows when a spec is really a compromise and when it's a cliff. Companies are legal wrappers. People are continuity. That realization rearranged my pride. For 8 years, I believed I had built Summit Ridge's government business. Truth, I'd built my government business and rented it to Summit Ridge until Summit Ridge forgot who signed the lease. We didn't gloat. We went to work. I called 3 program offices that week and had the same conversation 3 times in slightly different dialects. Major Taryn McCall at Offutt, Director Lionel Cho at Defense Logistics, Dr. Sada Wynn at White Sands. I explained my move. They asked one question. Can you keep the same team and deliverables on track? I told them exactly which faces would touch their files. We sent transition plans that read like flight plans. A month later, The St. Louis office buzzed with a particular mix of exhausted and proud. We made our first milestone on Ravenna 2 weeks early, not because we sprinted, but because we cut the theater and told the truth about risk. Commander Hart sent a 3-line email that meant more than any plaque. On schedule, on spec, on point. Keep going. Safaya asked me what I wanted next. Money was good. Equity would make it better. The thing I wanted couldn't fit in a spreadsheet. I wanted to be where competence outranked costume. 6 months after I walked, I signed the Ravenna renewal in Commander Hart's office under a fluorescent light that hummed like every government light since 1978. The same team sat around the same table with different logos on our lanyards. There were no victory speeches, just checklists and next steps and the soft exhale of work that continues. Later that afternoon, I stood at a window and watched a freight train thread the riverbank. A text arrived from Soren. Board met today, kneel out. Admin staff moved to Orion. Summit Ridge pivoting to commercial full-time. Harlan says it's back to basics. I wish him well. Basics aren't a punishment. They're a return. Some days competence is the most radical thing in the room. I've replayed that morning with the smirk 100 times. The smugness stung back then. Now it reads like a blindfold. He couldn't see what he didn't value. He couldn't value what he couldn't understand. He couldn't understand the thing I spent a life learning how to be the constant in systems designed to change. Here's the quiet power I took from it. The line I wish someone had whispered in my ear at 29. If you are the bridge, don't let someone who only loves their reflection tell you the river doesn't matter. Respect earned through competence and care outlives swagger every time. Authority fades when the door closes. Work remains when the phone rings. I pick up the phone the same way I did in uniform. This is Voss. And on the other end, someone says my name like a password we both know.